Hey there, baseball fans. Nathan Rohde and Shooter Hunt here with another edition of Coffee and Curveballs. We're continuing our look at the 2018 recruiting classes for the conferences across the country. We've done the SEC West and East, and now we have the ACC with the Atlantic Division. Starting us off, we have Boston College. Coach Mike Gambino up there. Top prospect in this class is Mason Pelio, a right-hander out of California. Pitched at area code games. Has a big frame, 6'4", 6'5", 220 pounds, so kind of what you're looking for in a workhorse pitcher. 88 to 90, he's got feel for a changeup, spins a breaking ball with some downer break, and there's some sink to that fastball as well. But it doesn't end there for Gambino and the Eagles.
Not at all. Big fan of Coach Gambino, and being up in New England, Boston area, you're going to have a little bit, not a little bit, a colder climate, battling some weather.
A lot colder.
Having those physical arms that can withstand that, while also competing in a vicious ACC conference. But I really like what they bring in. It's a lot of athletic players, multi-sport kids who may not be big on the national circuit for summer ball, but they grind it and get after it. I mean, they were in a super regional 2-3 years ago now. Coach Gambino did a great job with that team. But a kid I really like is Cody Morset. Saw him this summer, just super athletic kid. I saw him make some incredible plays at second base. Can also shift over to shortstop if he had to. I'm sure he'll spend some time in the outfield because he's a good runner. Battles at the plate from the left side. He's one to watch when he gets to campus. And then another one I watched this summer was Samrat Singh. A Jersey kid, of course, Rohde.
Of course.
But big, long left-hander. I saw him up to 90. It's real long limbs, and it was whipping out. And it's the type of arm where if it clicks for him, they found gold. Really smart kid. Could have gone to any of those Ivy League schools that he wanted to, but wanted that high baseball level. Or I don't want to say high because Ivy League baseball is real good too, but he wanted to play that ACC baseball, and if it clicks for them, Coach Gambino got a real good arm.
Excellent. Yeah, it'll be an interesting class to watch for Boston College. But moving on to our next school, we have Clemson. The Tigers always obviously very competitive in the ACC and even on the national level. Head coach Monty Lee kind of still getting his feet under him, at that program there. It's been a couple of years now since he took over for Jack Leggett, who obviously a legend in college baseball.
The legend, yep.
But they've got their recruiting coordinator in Bradley LaCroix, who is a big-time recruiter. I mean, this guy is one of the best in the country. We see him all over the place. Definitely a guy that's made a name for himself. And that's evident in this class. You look at the talent that is in the class for Clemson, and it's a really good class, but it's also one that you know how well they've done based on how much they're going to be worrying come draft time. Because there's a few names on this list that I can see very easily not ending up on campus. Nobody that's a slam dunk for me right now as like a first rounder, but definitely some guys that they might lose out on if they go in the top 3 rounds. Or even top 5 rounds. But to start it off, you've got Parker Meadows. It's no coincidence that he's committed to Clemson. Austin Meadows, it's his younger brother. He was committed to Clemson as well, but signed obviously in the first round. It's now a top prospect for the Pittsburgh Pirates. But Parker is super athletic, just like his brother was. Can really run. There's some swing and miss to his game, so that might hold him back from being a top draft guy right now in terms of signing. If he puts things together in the spring, he definitely has that athleticism and that frame that's going to make him jump up boards if guys like the consistency of his offense. But he can absolutely fly, and he looks the part on the field. So he's definitely a guy to watch throughout the spring to see whether he ends up on campus or delves into pro ball. But Justin Robleski, a pitchability lefty out of Georgia. He's got good life to his fastball, can really spot his pitches. Just one of those guys that, doesn't have really big, sexy stuff, but he just goes out there and he competes all the time. I definitely think that he's a guy that they can get on campus and would be a really good arm for them for 3 years at least and be able to contribute with them right away. If he's not starting, during like the midweek right away, I could definitely see him kind of being on the back of a weekend, getting his feet wet before, getting into a more prominent role there. Same goes for Carter Raffield, another good arm out of Georgia. Definitely a guy I can see ended up on campus unless he makes a jump in the spring. Two of the guys that I would probably be most worried about for Clemson are Nate Lamb, left-hander out of South Carolina, big physical kid, long limbs. There's a lot of heat on him down in Jupiter, and I know it's a little bit of a thinner year, in the Carolinas, so there might be some heavy interest in him come this springtime. But Charlie Mack out of New York is a guy. Yeah, he's a guy that they probably are super worried about. He's tried some behind the plate a little bit because guys have a question as to where he's going to play. He's not a shortstop in the future. Could probably play second base, maybe a little third base. But I had one scout tell me that he's the best hitter in the Northeast. So that'll go a long way with scouts come springtime. So the Clemson Tigers might be sweating him a little bit.
I think you told me. I think I watched him catch sometime this fall, and he said, "Hey, check this kid out behind the plate." And I was like, "Hey, this looks solid." And you were like, "This is the first time he's been back there."
Yeah, I was showing you a video from when he was in Jupiter. But I don't know if that was the absolute first time he had been back there, but he's definitely not spent much time back there. So he's definitely got some aptitude.
The athleticism for him to be back there, it sounds like he could do it if he had to at the pro level. But at Clemson, with Adam Hackenberg going there too, if that name sounds familiar, he's brother of Jets quarterback right now. I'm also a Jets fan, unfortunately for me. But
sorry to hear that.
Has a physical frame, and I know you like him too.
Yeah, he's definitely got a physical frame, and that translates to power at the plate. I definitely see him making it to campus. He's had some attention from the draft. He's at the Miller School in Virginia, so he got some looks when guys were seeing Tanner Morris last year out of Virginia. So he's no stranger to the professional world, but I don't think that he's quite ready for that jump yet. We'll see. Maybe he had an off season that he put things together, and we'll see how things go in the spring. But for right now, I think Clemson can bank on getting him on campus as a freshman. For
sure, and they should ride. Seth Beer's on campus this year. They're expecting big things for this coming season and riding the wave of all the success the football team's had. I know just talking to kids when I'm out on the road, Clemson's one of those hot schools. Right now it's been for a while, historically with baseball too. But kids are wanting to go there, and I'm sure they're reaping those benefits in recruiting.
No doubt. Speaking of reaping benefits and kids wanting to go there, another program that always has strong recruiting classes, always puts a good product on the field come springtime, is always in the thick of competing for an ACC title,
always,
even going to regional, super regionals, or even Omaha, and that's Florida State. And just like we talk about with Florida, the Vanderbilts of the world, it's all about reloading for them, and if they can get a few of these guys out of this recruiting class, it's going to be the same old story for the Seminoles. At the top, you got Nander DeSatis out of Florida. They're not getting him.
No.
He's probably going to be a first-round pick, really high offensive ceiling, switch hitter, plays shortstop, can probably stay there. So he's a guy that I can't imagine that they're expecting to get on campus. Like we said with Florida and Brady McConnell, as well as many other examples. Crazier things have happened, but it would probably behoove them to make plans of him going into pro ball. Brandon Howlett is another guy that could probably find his way to pro ball, can really hit. Solid defender over at third base. They might have to think about a future without him coming to campus. But the linchpin probably. What do you got?
Howlett could make it there.
He could. He could.
Because if he did drift down, I think it's a possible top 10 guy who, in 3 years, who gets the campus and enjoys, he's able to drive the ball to the opposite field, which is about maybe 210 to right field at Florida State. But he's a guy who could really make those jumps, similar to some guys in the past at FSU who've done the same. And, it depends what he wants to do. We don't know what he's going to do or what the spring season holds. But a guy like Brandon Howlett who could, from day one, hit in the middle of that order and provide some pop, that's a guy that Coach Martin would love to have.
Certainly. And I don't disagree. I just think, with his offensive profile, I think, because the hit tool is the most important tool and because there's some burgeoning power in there for him, that's something that's going to, come into play in the spring and probably increase his chances of, seeing a pretty decent payday. But for this class, it really, the linchpin, Shooter, as you mentioned, and I'll let you take this because it was your point, but the linchpin really could be Jack Anderson, a right-hander out of Florida. As to whether he makes it to campus or not, will really determine how this, class is rated down the road and pans out.
For sure. And this class seems a lot heavier with position guys. So that makes a guy like Jack Anderson that much more important. And our scouting director in Florida, Doug Freeman, who just crushes it, knows everything about the state, is ins and outs. But he's been a big fan of Jack Anderson. He and Mike Mayers, our scouting directors down there, huge fans of Jack Anderson, saying, hey, he's going to catch that helium. It's going to come. It's going to come. And sure enough, this fall, it came. So he's going to be one where, hey, this is a weekend starter for us if we get him to campus. And we've talked about it in some past shows. It is a good year to have a really good high school pitcher in your recruiting class because there's so many of them that a few more are going to be making their way to campus.
Absolutely.
What have you seen out of Jack Anderson?
Yeah, he definitely, Doug was talking him up to me, throughout the summer, saying this guy, is going to make a jump. And when he does, he's going to put his name, with a lot of the other top pitchers in the country. And sure enough, in the fall, he looked good. He definitely, I don't think he's quite in that upper echelon just yet. But like we said, it's a really deep class. So cracking that top group is going to be difficult. But I wouldn't be surprised to see it happen in the spring. And he's definitely a name that I'm going to be watching very closely personally as the spring comes along. But
for sure, and I just want to throw one more in about FSU. Is Robbie Martin's one of my sleeper favorite players in the class. I saw him last summer, left-handed stick, not plus wheels when he's running, but you can't win the doubles title hitting triples. So he's a guy who is going to hit doubles, and at that field, I already touched on the right field porch. He's going to really love that because his swing path, and I just really love his ability to pick up pitches. I think in the showcase that I watched him in, he had like 5 hits, went like 5 for 5 against some big Florida arms, of course. But a kid who can just really hit. And I know Knowles fans are going to be a big fan. They should probably, some of the top fans in the country at Florida State, get the songs ready for Robbie Martin because he's going to be one that you guys like.
Nice. So moving on to yet another strong recruiting class, and this is one, program that we've come to know as, being one of the bigger ones in the Midwest because they absolutely crush, scouting the Midwest and getting the recruits out of there, and not only that, but getting them to campus as well, and that's Louisville. You look at this class, and it's the top guys out of the Midwest, and, they're going to lose some of them to the draft. But it's certainly a strong class. It's going to keep the Cardinals, in the hunt for those ACC titles as well as trying to, make another trip to Omaha. For
sure. And I mean, Jared Kelenic at the top here out of Wisconsin, you know what? He's not making it to campus.
No.
He's ready for professional baseball right now. Like he could have been drafted last year if he wanted to. It's just such a physical frame at the plate. I've compared him to Daniel Murphy, that type swing where it's going to take off. But even outside him, you're talking Nicholas Schnell, another kid from Indiana who I know you love, and I saw the athleticism in Jupiter, just the way he's able to swing the bat. If he gets to campus, you're talking about Louisville's done such a great job, Coach McDonald and the staff, taking a guy from one level and just bumping up 2 steps by the time they're juniors for their draft year. And I mean, Schnell on campus 3 years from now, talking about a top 5 pick, that's not out of the question.
It's not. It definitely isn't. But I don't know that it's going to get to that discussion because I think Schnell is going to be a guy that, as long as he stays healthy and has a consistent spring, I think guys are going to continue to fall in love with the athleticism and his aptitude on the field. And he'll be a top 2 to 3 round pick, and I could see him bypassing college and making his way into pro ball immediately. But you make that point of Louisville taking those guys, that are here and then moving them to here by the time they're done. The guy that I think that could be, for Louisville in this class is definitely Carter Lohman. A real solid left-handed arm. Like I've mentioned before, not that big crazy stuff that you see out of high school arms, but I can easily see him going to Louisville, contributing right away, being a consistent performer for them for 3 years, and being a top 3 round pick after his junior season. A la, somebody like Drew Harrington, maybe a little less heralded, out of high school, but goes to Louisville, just continues to win, put together solid outings, and, the more you see him, the more you like him. And I think Carter Lohman is definitely going to fit into that mold with Louisville. And then Jack Perkins is also a guy that could take off, with Louisville. He's got big stuff now. He just needs to throw more strikes. So if he finds that in the spring, he starts to prove that, then it might be a different story. But he could really benefit from going to school, getting some of his innings there and letting that stuff, really develop, as he marches towards his junior season.
Yeah, he's in the same mold that I think of with a lot of those Louisville pitchers, the Birdie brothers, where, hey, this kid throws hard and just was able to take it to another level on campus and became one of those premier starters. But he's just broad-shouldered. He's got that athletic, thick frame, and obviously already running it up into the mid-90s with a really good slider. I think on campus, that's a guy where it could go either way. Does he want professional baseball, or does he want to pitch on the weekends in the ACC for 3 years and then, become a top 20 pick in a few years?
Certainly.
Yeah.
But then they also got a couple of middle infielders, that are really worth looking at. I'm a big fan of Tim Borden. I think he's pretty athletic. I think he has a chance to stay at shortstop, solid bat. I think he's going to be a good college player. But then potentially playing just across second base from him, for a couple of years, is going to be Jared Poland. That kid can absolutely rake. Every time we see him, we're not sure where he's, going to play. Second base, he's probably fine, but he's definitely an offensive player. Dude just mashes every time we see him. I'll go out on a limb now. I'll say 3 years, every year, freshman, sophomore, junior year, he's going to hit 300 for Louisville.
Without a doubt. And we've talked about like a Nick Madrigal in the past, that type of shorter frame, but aggressive hacks, and he stands in there, and I've said this in the past talking with you, where this guy is going to be a big leaguer. He's going to work his way there, and he'll find his way onto the field, and he rips doubles to both gaps and just has those quick, strong hands, or those quick hands, those strong wrists. Like there's so much to like about him. And again, we keep preaching on this because Louisville seems to keep bringing in the type of player that makes them the winners that they are. But these athletic, shorter infielders who can run but really know how to hit and are aggressive at the plate, and that's why they've been so successful.
Certainly, and he's a guy, like you said, is going to find his way to the big leagues because of the profile and because of the weight put on the bat for him. He's going to be one of those guys that he just has to continuously prove it over and over and over again. But I think he's a guy that he's not going to disappoint. He's going to come out there and he is going to prove it time and time again. He's just going to have to keep taking that test. But a couple other guys to mention with Louisville, because it's a really deep class. There's a lot of volume here, and I think they can get a lot of these guys. I think Kalanick, Schnell are both going to sign. Outside of that, maybe we get surprised and one or two of those other guys sign, but I think the rest of the class, they have a really strong chance of getting everybody. But Henry Davis is an excellent defender out of New York. There's some questions about the bat, but I had some scouts, tell me. I was sitting with them at Tournament of Stars, and we watched him throw down to second base, and they're like, that is a 70 arm. It is plus. So he definitely could be a defensive, big time defensive guy for Louisville. So it's another name to watch within this class.
Okay.
Moving on to NC State, Shooter, I know you like Luca Tresh, a guy out of Florida. There's so many programs down there in Florida. It's not rare for a guy to come up north, but it's definitely a good get for the Wolfpack to dip into that Florida talent pool like they did, like with Trey Turner a few years ago. Kind of dip in down there and get a guy to come up to Raleigh, North Carolina.
For sure, and I'm a huge fan of what Luca Tresh is about. I saw him in May, and just his almost the leadership capabilities, and I'm big on this, behind the plate, controlling his staff, controlling the running game, and being that guy who can be the rock for the coaching staff to lean on with the connection between coaches and players. Mm-hmm. Luca Tresh is a guy who's going to be great on campus. It's going to be 3-year guy who is going to battle in at-bats, drive the ball to all fields. He'll do the little things right, but importantly, behind the plate, he's going to help a staff, mm-hmm. which, even more important, saving runs back there more so than producing them at the plate. For me, as a pitcher, I'm kind of biased about this, but I think Luca Tresh coming out of Florida is going to be huge for Coach Avent there.
Mm-hmm, certainly, and I definitely think he can get there. He's going to get some draft attention through the spring, unless he kind of makes one of those jumps like Sam McMillan did last year, or kind of endears himself with scouts. There's always a chance that he'll decide on pro ball, but I definitely think strong chance that NC State can get him. Another guy I think they'll definitely get that could be a good arm for them for a few years is Logan Whitaker, right-hander out. He's kind of a local guy, a little west of here in North Carolina, but he's got that kind of that long projectable frame, pitching in the high 80s. So it's very easy to see him making that jump, going to NC State and being a guy, potentially after 3 years with the Wolfpack. So certainly, NC State kind of sticking with being, a competitor in the ACC, especially in the Atlantic Division. So one to watch, with this class for sure. But
sure.
Let's move on to Notre Dame, venturing out all the way to northern Indiana, even though this is an Atlantic coast.
And we talked about with Notre Dame being in ACC and having to go against all these warm climate schools.
It's very challenging for them.
It is challenging being in the Midwest like that, but they are bringing some good ones. Like Mitchell Mejias from Ohio is a big physical right-hander. Fastballs run up low 90s, 93, but it's a physical guy who can withstand those, colder February, March, April games in South Bend, and could make that jump later on. And I don't think he's a huge draft name for this year, but 3 years from now, it could be. The frame's there. It's a strong arm. Jack Ziska, another outfielder from New Jersey, is just a small grinder. Can run, just tough kid who isn't going to get bullied in the box. He's great at bats. He's going to defend well. Can run. So it's a 6'6" runner. So he's a guy who has the athleticism to play in ACC, who's going to give them some balance in the outfield. And then another guy that we both saw, Evan Tenuta from Illinois,
it's a good arm
I
for
saw
them.
him at the fall championships, and I like the athletic, just kind of gets out there, a long stride, quick arm. He's one, especially in the deep class of 2018 with the arms in high school, one that gets to campus who I think could make that jump. And, Notre Dame's produced some real good arms recently.
Yeah, they certainly have. And shifting on to our final team to talk about in the ACC Atlantic, kind of in that same realm where we're talking about Notre Dame, being a private school, but in that cold weather climate. So they're a little bit of a disadvantage, with their counterparts in the ACC of trying to get those recruits. They're at a disadvantage to programs like Wake Forest, private school, but they have a little bit of a warmer climate going for them. So you're going to see, some similar type players. But this class for Wake Forest, Coach Walter there is really making a name for that staff, and that program is kind of returning to what we saw and expected out of it from the late 90s to the early 2000s. And right off the bat, you look at like Grant Levine, first baseman out of New Hampshire, shooter. I know you like him. He's a guy that is going to get some attention from the draft, but being that he's a first baseman, there's a lot of pressure on that bat. So there's a chance that, Wake Forest could get him, and he's a guy that if he gets there right away, not only is it an advanced bat, but Wake Forest has got a short porch, especially in right field. Levine's left-handed hitter. He could put up some big home run numbers there.
For sure, Rody. I got to stop you, though, because Coach Salento would call you out. It's not Wake Forest, it's Rake Forest. So let's get it right. Those lefties with the short porch.
Sorry, Coach.
That's Rake Forest.
My bad.
But, I mean, Wake Forest, in the recent years, Coach Walter got there, and they committed money to the program. They're building all these new facilities. I know Coach Hobbs, I can't say enough good things about him as a pitching mind. Mm-hmm. He's one of the top young guys in baseball. If you get a chance, anybody who's listening who's a pitching guy, Coach Hobbs is great. I mean, I really enjoyed talking with him in Jupiter. But they've committed to those facilities, to the program, and that's why you're getting these guys now who are coming in and are going to make a difference. I mean, Grant Levine is a bat who I think could be a possible first or second round pick in 3 years with that power upside. But Ryan Cusick's an arm who, I mean, they may be sweating it out in June this year. What do you think, Rody?
Yeah, I definitely think they probably will be sweating that one out. Just like we've talked about on our previous, episodes. Northeast arm, those guys, are fresh. Maybe not as logged as many miles on the arm. Won't pitch a ton in the spring, so it's not like they're going to come out in February and blow 95, and then by June they've kind of blown out. They're going to kind of make a progression toward, ramping it up, right before the draft. So Cusick is definitely a guy I think Wake Forest is, going to be sweating out a little bit. Not as much, but certainly a guy that could make a jump. If he makes it to campus, could be a really good arm for them is Shane Smith. He's got that big frame. Definitely a guy that I think, we know about in high school. He's on the radar, but very easily can see him, winding up in Winston-Salem. And 3 years from now, we're talking about him as one of the top college prospects in the country.
It's a good high school crop in New England, and Wake Forest is kind of reaping the benefits of this. And Shane Smith's a guy I saw last summer who was like, hey, this guy can make that jump once he gets to campus to be, again, I keep preaching a weekend type arm because those weekend arms are the ones who are going to carry you the most. But those thicker, broad-shouldered, strong arms from New England are the guys that they have. And who's going to catch them? Brendan Tinsman, a catcher out of Maine, going all the way down to Wake Forest, North Carolina. But he's a kid who I saw in Jupiter. And, again, as a pitcher, a guy who can receive and save you pitches 1-1 and get it to 1-2 instead of 2-1 is something that pitchers, there's nothing better than a guy who's going to steal you strikes and control the running game. I think he'll need some more of those high-level at-bats because in Maine, just not getting as much of those 90-plus arms that he's going to see every weekend in the ACC. But he's a guy who I think is going to be really impactful to that pitching staff at Wake Forest.
Certainly. So that's a look at the ACC Atlantic Division. Next up is going to be the ACC Coastal Division, continuing on with our look at the recruiting classes for 2018, Coffee and Curveballs. Thanks so much for joining us again. Make sure to jump on prepbaseballreport.com. Plenty of content to keep you in tune with baseball, even though it's winter, nobody's playing. I know we're all dying to get out there and see games, but there's plenty for you guys to check out throughout the holiday season. So he's Shooter Hunt. I'm Nathan Rohde. This is Coffee and Curveballs. Thanks for joining us, and we'll see you at the ballpark.